Good afternoon, everyone. I'm spot on weather meteorologist Matthew Euler, and I decided to go ahead and cut this video. Now, this video is focused in on cooler Augusts and Septembers, back to back cooler August and Septembers, and then I just examine to see what happened the following winter seasons. So I hope you enjoy this presentation. By the way, I'm going to break this down into two parts because it's an awful lot of slides. So I'm going to start off today with part one, and then at some point this week, I'm definitely hoping to conclude with part two. And the end of part two is going to have a potential new winter analog based on not only the cooler August and September back to back, but also when we look at other teleconnections from those winters I examined, and you'll see what I show here in the video. All right, so the overview is using below average temperatures in August, the overall below mean temperatures in August and September, back to back. We examine the following winter seasons. So we're going to look at the winter seasons that follow these back-to-back below normal temperature months. Now, one thing that I've been trying to get my hands on it from the PRISM Climate Group is I wanted to see what the whole United States map looked like for the mean temperature departures from normal. But unfortunately, it's not been loading, at least for the first week here of October. So I am going to go off of my numbers here in Hampton Roads. We had a below normal August for Hampton Roads, Virginia cities, as well as a below average September as far as the mean temperature for Hampton Roads cities. All right, so we're going to take a look at the fall seasonal anomalies, the winter season anomalies, and then we'll look at potential analog years. We're going to just kind of start things off by looking at 2025. Now, I want to point out a couple things on this. Okay. The first thing I want to point out, this is August 2025 on the left. These are the departures from the mean temperature. So blue colors below normal, orange colors above normal, and where you don't see any colors at all with these goose egg zeros, that's near average, right? So you can see clearly the cooler air was focused along the mid-Atlantic for the month of August 2025. We saw temperatures averaging anywhere from 2 to 3 degrees Fahrenheit below normal across much of the region. You saw where the milder temperatures resided in August of 2025. They were out over the Pacific Northwest, running 2 to 4 degrees above average, also down in the desert Southwest, specifically Arizona, where temperatures are running 3 to 4 degrees above normal. Over here on the right-hand side, you'll see, now this was only up through the 18th of September. Okay, I was looking for the complete September mean temperature departure from normal from the PRISM Climate Group, but unfortunately it's not loading right now. This was through the 18th, so the 18th of September 2025, and you clearly see the focus of the mid-Atlantic once again with the green coloring here with 4 to 6 degree below average mean temperatures for September up to the 18th. Now, I will say this, of course, it wasn't terribly cooler than normal, I will say, for September because we had a warmer stretch of weather there towards the latter part of September. But for Hampton Roads cities, we still finished below normal in September. You see where the warmer than normal temperatures were setting up across the Pacific Northwest, parts of Washington State, northern Idaho, and western Montana were running 7 to 10 degrees above normal in September through the 18th. Okay, not the whole month. Now, if we just examine on the bottom here, the Hampton Roads mean temperature departures. Now, this is directly from my location in Virginia Beach. Okay, so August was a very cool month. I was running 4.1 degrees below normal. And then September, I ended up finishing minus 2.5 degrees. So as you can see, back-to-back cooler than normal months for Hampton Roads. I know the Norfolk Airport wasn't this significantly cooler than normal. It was actually minus 1 point something, so it wasn't quite this significant. But let's examine to see what happens since we had cooler than average August and a cooler than average September. Let's examine to see what happened the following winters. Now, I'm going to first start off by, looking at the August and September time periods of each of these years that I examined that had back-to-back cooler than normal August and September. So 1981, these are the temperature anomalies on the left for August of 1981, and you clearly see the cooler than normal temperatures in the mid-Atlantic, right? You see a lot of the country actually below normal in August of 81. The only areas that were warmer than normal were up in the Pacific Northwest and up here in Montana and North Dakota. Not quite the same look in August of 25, but there was a warmer area there in the Pacific Northwest in August 25 as compared to August 81. All right, over here on the right, what did September of 1981 look like? Again, below normal east of the Mississippi River. You clearly see the blue and the green coloring. So below normal readings in mid-Atlantic, once again, back-to-back cooler than average months, August 81, September 1981. Now let's look at the winter months over here on the left. We're looking at the temperature anomalies. This is from the NOAA PSL, Physical Sciences Laboratory. And you see these aquas and these blue colors indicate below normal temperatures. Now, this is for the December to February time period. So this is the 81-82 winter season, December through February. Below normal readings were really focused into Montana, the Dakotas, parts of Minnesota, and Iowa, Illinois, and Indiana. That's where you see the darker blues, right? That's the greatest departures from normal. For the period, the winter of 81-82, above normal readings were in the yellow and oranges here in the desert Southwest, and it was above normal temperature-wise there in Florida. But we do see the below normal for the Mid-Atlantic up to New England as well for that winter. Now, the precipitation anomalies over here on the right for the winter of 81-82, it was much above normal precipitation across parts of coastal Oregon and Washington State. It was a very dry winter, 81-82 across Southern California, very dry in the yellow across Northeast Texas, Arkansas, Louisiana, and we were running above normal for precip across the Mid-Atlantic, specifically the Southern Mid-Atlantic into the Virginias and Carolina area. We look at now the snowfall totals for various cities in the 81-82 winter. So we're showing you the months of December, January, February, and March, and the overall seasonal totals on the far right column. So you clearly see, Boston, New York City, Philly, Baltimore, D.C., and Richmond, Virginia, kind of showing you the breakout of the snow each month. And then the seasonal snowfall totals over here on the right. When we look at the teleconnections for the winter of 81-82, we're going to start off with the North Atlantic Oscillation, NAO, and we started early December 81. We had a negative NAO. We had a positive NAO there from the second week of December right on through about the 20th, 21st time period, and then it went negative again. Late December, right on through early January, the negative NAO was definitely there. And then just slightly negative NAO for the rest of January of 82. And then we went to a positive NAO into February and March. We look at the daily AO, the Arctic Oscillation. We started out on a positive AO note early December 81, dropping pretty significantly negative right on from about December 7th all the way through about January 13th. And there were some periods in here, specifically around the New Year's time period in 1981, where this Arctic Oscillation really took a negative dive. And you can see how tall these bars are, these blue bars are in the negative territory. Only a brief period of a positive AO there in mid-January, and then drop back negative again, not as significantly negative, but still negative there into late January. We had another negative period brief there into early February before we went positive with the AO beyond the first week of February. But just goes to show you the AO is a significant contributor. The Arctic Oscillation, when it goes this significantly negative, it tends to favor colder temperatures for the eastern United States. We look at the PNA index, the Pacific North American index. Positive phases of the PNA for much of December, up until about Christmas time of 81. Then we saw the PNA dip fairly significantly negative from around Christmas into about the 10th of January of 82. Brief positive after that, then back negative again, and just beyond mid-January of 82, and then kind of went back and forth here through the rest of the winter before going back negative with the P&A there beyond mid-February. So positive P&As are typically going to give you colder temperatures and troughs in the eastern United States and warmer temperatures with the positive P&As out in the western United States and drier conditions. The negative P&A, on the other hand, is going to generally result in more of the troughing in the western United States and the ridging in the east. If we look at the Matt-Julian oscillation and what it looked like in the winter of 81-82, now each of these color lines means something different. So the blue line is December, okay? The green line is for November, and then the red line is for October. So generally in October, we were on just barely out of the null phase into phases 8 and 1. That was October, the red line. And then we get to the green line in November. We were pretty much in the null phase. MJO wasn't having much of an impact in November of 81. And then blue, really, that green, that's a blue line for December. It really comes out into phases 5, 6, 7, and even into 8 and 1 at the end of December. Now, this is interesting. We're going out into colder phases 8 and 1 of the MJO for the eastern United States in late December 81. And then we have a strongly negative, we have a very strongly negative AO to go with that. All right. Over on the right-hand side is the MJO for January through March of 82. This blue line represents March. The green line represents February. And the red line represents January. So in early January, we were in phase pretty strongly into phase 1. And then that rotated into phase 2, then back into the smaller inner circle here, a more non-impactful MJO phase for U.S. weather. And then we went to the green line is February. So you see it came out briefly a little bit in the weaker phases 6 and 7. And then also towards the end of February, out weaker into phases 8 and 1 again. And then we see the blue line kind of working its way back into the small inner circle here, non-impactful MJO. If we look at the 500 millibar height anomalies for the winter of 81-82, green colors and blue colors indicate troughing and below normal heights. The yellows and the orange colors indicate above normal heights or ridging. So December 81 is over here on the left, and you clearly see we had troughing there in the Gulf of Alaska. We had ridging over the desert southwest into Southern California, and then we had troughing along the U.S. East Coast. But look above that. We had anomalously higher than normal heights of the Arctic area in December 81. You can see that with the oranges and the yellow colors there. Over in the middle now, we're showing January of 82, and you see that green color indicating troughing from basically northwestern Canada down through New England. And now that trough has been replaced by a ridge in the Gulf of Alaska in January of 82 with the yellow color here. And then we do see that a lot of those above normal heights across the Arctic start to diminish somewhat in January of 82. Over on the far right, this is the 500 millibar height anomalies for February of 82. We see a very strong ridge that has built up into the Bering Sea. This looks a lot like a negative EPO here, where we have a strong ridge, anomalously higher than normal heights in the red color, and that's above or to the north of these lower heights there, just to the north of the Hawaiian Islands. So it's a negative Eastern Pacific oscillation, and you have a very strong upper low there in the vicinity of Iceland. You actually have above normal heights across the eastern United States, the eastern seaboard in general. Here were the sea surface temperature anomalies in December 81 on the left. Any of these peach colors indicating above normal sea surface temperatures. There was some above normal water temperatures across much of the tropical Pacific areas. We see below normal water temperatures there just off the U.S. West Coast. Over here in the middle, we see the sea surface temperature anomalies of January 82. Some of those cooler than normal waters start to warm a little bit in January of 82, and we see above normal water temperatures to the southeast of the Hawaiian Islands, as well as off the coast of South America. And over here on the far right, we're looking at sea surface temperature anomalies for February of 82. We see the water is cooling, generally across just to the northwest of the Hawaiian Islands. We see warming waters, on the other hand, south of the Aleutian Islands, up into the Bering Sea. And water temps are pretty close to normal. They're off the west coast of Canada, slightly below normal off the Pacific Northwest coast. Now, to combine the sea surface temperatures with what we had going on other teleconnection wise, this was an ENSO neutral winter, which featured an easterly QBO quasi-biennial oscillation and a positive Pacific decadal oscillation. All right, so now let's move on to 1982. This was another year in which we had back-to-back below normal mean temperatures for August and September. And you notice August here on the left, August 82, well below normal across the eastern U.S. Specifically, if you look into Ohio and Pennsylvania, up to New York, state and Maine, temperatures running 4 to 6 degrees below normal in the green colors for August of 82, down across the mid-Atlantic running about 3 degrees below normal. And over here on the right is September of 82. Look how much of the United States is below normal in September of 82. Everywhere except Oklahoma into Texas was running below normal in September of 82. What did the 82-83 winter seasons look like? Well, it was a warm one across a lot of the northern U.S. It was very warm into New England, above normal temperatures for that winter into Virginia, down to Tennessee, Arkansas, all the way back to the Pacific Northwest. Over here on the right, we had a near average winter season for precipitation in the white colors here across Virginia, as well as parts of Maryland. We did see slightly drier than normal conditions across western PA, including Pittsburgh, but really above normal precipitation in the winter of 82-83 here in Louisiana and Mississippi. That was the bullseye of the wettest conditions. And also southern Florida was quite wet that winter. Basically the huge stretch of land here, all the way from Washington State down to Southern California, was above normal for precipitation. We look at the snowfall totals for the various cities once again for each of the months, and then the seasonal snowfall totals from Boston, New York City, down to Philly, Baltimore, Washington, D.C., and Richmond. And that was a pretty big February for Richmond, Virginia. 21.4 inches of snow that particular winter in that particular February of 83. We look at the teleconnections, the daily NAO. We see a lot of positive NAO here going on for this winter. Wow, just impressive from December 1st all the way really to early February. It was a predominantly strongly positive NAO, only briefly negative there beyond mid-January of 83. We look at the AO, a very strongly positive winter for the AO as well from December 1st, and look how tall these red vertical bars get. In January of 83, the first couple weeks of January 83, look how tall these get. Very strongly positive AO, briefly turning negative beyond the 15th, but only briefly by about 4 days or so. And then we go right back to positive AO at the end of January. And then finally, the AO crashes into the first, well, really beyond the first couple weeks. Much of February saw a negative AO. Look at the PNA, mostly a positive PNA throughout the winter. Some closer periods to neutral beyond mid-December 82, right on into mid-January 83. It's really impressive from December 1st all the way to the 31st of March on the far right. You see these red tall bars here indicating a positive PNA. We look at the MJO, and from October 1st of 82 to December 31st of 82, you really see the red line is October again. The blue line there is December. The green line is November. So really, in October, in that red line there, we're mainly looking at a null phase or non-impactful phase of the MJO. It did work out at the end of October, though, out of that null phase into phases 1 and 2. That green line represents November, and the MJO got a little more active, especially beyond mid-November here into phases 8 and 1 towards Thanksgiving of 1982. Then it worked its way around into phase 2 and 3, and then worked its way into the null phase. And then finally, the blue line represents December. It went into the null phase for a bit, then kind of came out into phase 3. We look over here on the right, January of 83 to March 83, and you see January's red line. Generally, we're starting in the null phase in early January 83, working our way briefly out into MJO phase 8 by the end of January. And then by the time we get to February, which is this green line, we work our way out into phase 3, phase 4, weak phase 5, and 6. And then finally, this blue line, mainly working its way out. The blue line represents your March time period. MJO is briefly into weak phase 7, but kind of works its way back into the inner circle here, non-impactful null phase. We look at the 500 millibar height anomalies, December 82 on the left. You see the troughing in the green colors and the blue colors. So a lot of troughing across the North Atlantic with that positive NAO, right? We said it was a very strongly positive NAO. Look at that. Absolutely. And we expect to see the troughing situated generally right in the area of Greenland in that North Atlantic. And we see some troughing as well on the Pacific side, south of the Aleutian Islands. And we see above normal heights across the eastern United States. So that's going to support milder temperatures overall. Over here in the middle, we see January of 83, a lot of blue coloring across the Arctic regions, both on the Atlantic side and the Pacific side. Very strong looking Aleutian low there south of the Aleutian Islands there in the Northeast Pacific, and a very strong looking low as well from Iceland over to southern Greenland. Beneath these lower heights in the higher latitudes, we have milder conditions across the mid latitudes in January of 83. You look at much of the United States in the yellows, as well as really focus there on Portugal and Spain and France, well above normal heights in January of 83. And over here on the right, we see a continued strong, very strong Aleutian low in the Northeast Pacific. Purple colors now indicating exceedingly well below normal 500 millibar height anomalies. And we now see the troughing that was just south or over Greenland itself. We now see the North Atlantic being replaced with more of a orange color here above normal heights across the North Atlantic. Now let's go back to the NAO now and look at that. Okay, so that would mean we would go to more of a negative NAO. I think that's this period right here in February where you're seeing these blue bars. We'll go to a negative NAO. We're going to get more of the upper level ridging and above normal heights across the North Atlantic there. We look at the sea surface temperature anomalies. I mean, look how much cooler the Pacific Ocean is in December of 82. Look at the blue coloring here. And then you see just this major El Nino signature going on. December 82, look at the middle here, the middle graphic, January 83, and then February 83 on the far right. And this is a significant El Nino event, that particular winter, the winter of 82, 83. But look how much cooler the waters were in the Pacific Ocean in the wintertime. All right, if we can get a map like this today, that'd be amazing in the winter. Very much below normal water temperatures. Definitely a positive PDO. We see the ring of warmer than normal water temperatures from the Gulf of Alaska down off the west coast of the U.S. just to the east of Hawaii, and you got the cooler than normal waters over the open waters of the north central Pacific. So this winter of 82, 83, we had a very strong El Nino, westerly phase of the QBO, and a positive PDO. So now let's move ahead to 1994, August 94 on the left, September 94 on the right, and look at much of the eastern United States in August of 94 running below normal with the blue colors. The same goes for September of 94 here on the right. So really impressive back-to-back months cooler than normal for the east. And then this was the winter of 1994-95. It was a mild winter. But you really see where the bulk of the warmest temperature anomalies occurred in the deeper oranges across the Intermountain West, the Rockies, Montana into Nevada, Utah. Look how above normal the temperatures were that winter of 94, 95. The lighter yellows, they're not as significantly above normal. They're only about a 1 degree Fahrenheit above normal, the lighter yellows in the east towards the eastern seaboard. Very mild in the upper Midwest, very mild in New England that winter. And then over here on the right-hand side are the precipitation anomalies for that winter of 94, 95. Look how much above normal the winter was across California, across Arizona, across eastern Texas, across southern Florida, as well as parts of the North Carolina and South Carolina area. We did see a very much below normal precipitation for the winter of 94, 95 for Hampton Roads up towards the Delmarva. And it was below normal as well in the yellow colors here in the upper Midwest. If we look at the winter seasonal snowfall totals here, 94, 95, much less. Boston, only 14.8 inches of snow for the entire winter. I mean, look at this, only 1.5 inches in December. New York City only got 11.8 inches for that season. Philadelphia only got 9.8 inches, didn't even make double digits. And then Baltimore the same at 8 inches at BWI. DC 10.1 inches, and then Richmond only got 3.9 inches for that winter of 94, 95. We look at the teleconnections that tell the story. Mild US for the most part, positive NAO. Okay, there you go. It can't get much better correlated than that. And then the Arctic oscillation was strongly positive in December, early December. Some brief bouts of going negative with these blue bars for the AO, but not very often. We saw a lot of above the zero line here, a lot of positive AO values for the winter of 94, 95. There was a period towards late January of 95 where the AO did go negative for a bit. The PNA, negative for the beginning of January 94, turning positive for much of the remainder of December into early January, brief negative, then back to positive. And then February really went strongly positive in early February of 95. We look at the MJO. Let's see how active the MJO was from October to December of 94. The blue bar, the blue line again, blue line represents December. So you notice the green and the red line, October and November over here. For the fall, we were mainly working into, let's see, October started with the red line here, worked its way into 8 and 1, and then worked its way into phase 2, phase 3, and back to the inner circle. See, the green line is November. It tends to work its way through phase 2 and then back into the inner circle, then back out into phase 3, and then December, a much stronger MJO signal into phases 4 and 5, where you had convection pretty much centered over the Australian maritime continent, and then it wraps around in December into phases 6 and 7 before going back into the small inner circle here. Over here on the right, the MJO from January 95 to March 95, and the let's start with January. January is the red line, so the MJO came out briefly into weak phase 3, a little bit stronger phase 4 and 5 by late January, and worked its way into the small inner circle here, the non-impactful phase. Then the green line is basically for February, notice, and begins in that small null phase, small inner circle here in January, or rather in February, excuse me. Then for February, the MJO worked out into phase 3 and 4 and back in again. And then in March, you see phase 4 and 5 and 6. These are the warmer sides of the MJO phase diagram for the eastern United States. When the MJO goes this strongly into 4 and 5 and 6, it tends to be warmer for the east. We look at the 500 millibar height anomalies, December 94 over here on the left. We see a lot of lower than normal height anomalies across the high north, the Arctic areas. There's well above normal heights in the oranges here across the eastern United States. That's associated with upper level ridging and dry and mild conditions for December of 94. And then January 95 in the middle, we got the Aleutian low cranking up a little bit more with the blue coloring there across the Northeast Pacific. And then we see above normal heights across Canada, right on down to the northern U.S. and all the way across the Atlantic over to western portions of Spain and Portugal. We do see the below normal heights there just to the east of Greenland in January of 95. And then over here on the far right, February 95, we see a lot of lower heights across the northern Pacific, just north of Hawaii. We do see higher than normal heights across the western United States and across a lot of the high north areas, specifically north of Russia. We do see a fairly strong lower than normal height signature in the blue colors here, generally to the east of Greenland, working its way towards northwestern Europe. Here with the sea surface temperature anomalies for the winter of 94-95, look at the cool ring of water here along the U.S. West Coast. That would be associated with a negative PDO in December for sure. The warmer waters out over the north central Pacific. We do see a warmer than normal signature across the central tropical Pacific. That kind of wanes here in the middle when we get to January 95, as well as this deeply blue signature of cooler normal waters off the west coast. It starts warming a bit. And over here on the far right, we see warming waters now off the U.S. West Coast by February there of 95, and then we see cooler than normal water across the central North Pacific Ocean. So the winter of 94-95 can be characterized by another El Nino, but it's more central or more the central based El Nino type. A westerly QBO was predominant that winter, and that negative PDO then went over to neutral conditions. All right, that wraps up part one. As you can kind of see, I'm working my way through the various winter seasons. We took a look at back-to-back below normal temperatures for the months of August and September. I'm looking at those years specifically, going back to 1980. So we've made it all the way up to the winter of 94-95. And we will eventually get into the start to the next video with the winter of 96-97. And at the very end of this, again, I'm going to show you potential similarities to one particular winter of the past and kind of the way the teleconnections are looking for the upcoming winter. So that's all I got for now. For time's sake, I'm going and dividing this into two pieces. But everybody, I appreciate your attention, and thanks for subscribing to the channel here. That's all I got for now. Until next time, take care and God bless everyone.